Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you may be listening to us from here on this big, beautiful planet we call Earth. This is Michael Cross here with another edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions. And I think that you'll find today's program enlightening, hopefully stimulating, and you'll see the context of what I mean by stimulating here in just a moment, and something that you can actually apply in your life. But before I begin, I would encourage people to subscribe to this station so that you'll be able to keep up on future shows in case you're not tuned in directly. And also, check out my recent sci-fi, The Destiny of Our Past. I think you'll find, if you like dystopian literature that explores where we might be in just the next couple of decades in regards to all the new technologies, nanotechnology, biotechnology, and so forth, in the context of maybe we've already been here. All right? Maybe there was more going on during the era of Noah than just some farmer building a boat. But anyway, let's just go ahead and get into the topic. Now, the title I'm going to use is going to be something similar to Pavlov's dogs and social media. I'm probably going, well, what does that got to do? What do those two topics have to do with anything related to one another? Actually, they have everything related to one another, because the principles by which Pavlov was able to train his dogs in his famous experiments are basically the same phenomena taking place with social media. Now, let me just start again without going into a really long lecture on, operant and classical conditioning. I'm just going to say this. Conditioning, just summed up very generally, means that you associate one stimulus with another, thereby creating a reward, a pleasure. And I know Skinner would really hate this, and Skinner was one of the that really was into Pavlov, to borrow from Freud, the whole pleasure principle. Humans as an organism want to experience pleasure rather than pain. And this makes perfect sense. I guess you don't need to be a doctor of psychology to know this. But the thing is, the principles that Pavlov brought up with his experiments, the whole ringing the bell, associating it with food, and therefore the dog salivated, essentially is what is used in our social media. And I'm not going to use the word addiction, even though I guess it might actually be appropriate, because really addiction is something that's hard to define. But let's say this. You have Pavlov. He's trying to, he actually didn't start out. That was not the intention, but, of course, a lot of times when you do experiments, you get a result that actually everyone remembers. What he discovered was that if a dog hears a bell ring, it will believe that food is coming, because you've associated the food that comes to it immediately afterwards. And this works with humans too. Come on, anyone's been through high school or grade school or whatever in the United States knows that you may not even be thinking of food, but when that lunch bell rings, you get hungry, because your body has associated the bell with food. Now, if you brought an exchange student, let's say from China, and he or she were sitting in the class, and the bell rang, it would not have an effect on them, because they would not have associated the two together. They would not have, because it's an artificial stimulus. A bell has nothing to do with food in nature, for instance. Smell has something to do with food. Okay, so that would not really be something that would be associated with conditioning. If you smell or see food, you get hungry. All right, that would just be natural. But if I associate something with it, let's say a small child, before it gets fed, when it's hungry, the mother sings a particular song to that child and then feeds the child. In theory, later in life, when they hear that song, they're going to get hungry. Okay? Even though the song in nature has nothing to do with food. It's been associated. It's been put together. It's been married, so to speak, with the particular reward that's going to come, or pleasure that's going to come, the satisfaction of a need. Now, the thing is, again, without having to go into a lot of neurochemistry and so forth, our brains are designed to want to be rewarded. Okay? Again, talking about this whole addiction thing, I've seen people talk, how do we get rid of addiction? Well, essentially, an addiction is caused when the pleasure from whatever you're using is greater than the negative consequence or the perceived consequence of that behavior. In other words, if someone starts smoking, maybe because their friends are saying, oh, this will be cool, when they're like 13, someone's bought an older brother or sister or friend's brother or sister's bought some cigarettes. And at first it starts out as a social approval, like, oh, right, we're doing something naughty. So they start smoking them. And at first it's really horrible, they get sick. Not all the time, often they get sick, nauseated, or just start coughing. But their friends are sort of egging each other on. Oh, this is great. Oh, this is fun. And they laugh at each other as they gasping for air. But something else is happening during this process if it continues several more times. And that is the nicotine is triggering parts of the brain that are associated with pleasure. For instance, hormones, serotonin, dopamines, so forth. And that pleasure is very intense. They feel stimulated. At the same time, your friends are egging you on. So you're getting social reward as well as physiological reward. And then you get, the teacher going, drugs are bad, don't use cigarettes and stuff like this. At the same time, maybe they have some sort of program at the school where all they're talking about is drugs. Oh, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And they're thinking, and this reminds them of the pleasure that they've had through smoking. And so what's the first thing they do after one of these really intense programs where they have the assemblies and they have a speaker that comes in with only a third of a lung left or something like that? What happens? First thing they do is they go out and they smoke. You've created kind of an unease as well, which, there's a little bit of fear going in their mind. So what happens? They go out and they smoke to get rid of the fear. This works whether it is cigarettes, it works whether it's alcohol, it works whether it's any number of things. Because our brains want reward. Food's a great example. How many people that are obese do not realize that being obese is unhealthy? All right. How many of them don't realize that it's affecting their fertility? It's affecting their, it can be associated with the eventual development of Alzheimer's or the earlier development of diabetes. It can be associated with heart disease, stroke. The list can go on and on and on. Okay? They understand that. But, if you've ever heard the term comfort food, often when they get very neurotic about a situation, when the stress hits, and it could even be the stress of watching a TV program, a documentary about how dangerous being overweight is. What's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to start munching on high-calorie foods. Now, our brains were designed to have a craving for high-calorie foods because in nature, you don't know when you're going to get food. Okay? Most of the history of humanity has been one in which you were never absolutely certain you were going to get fed. All right. So our natural inclination, since, you didn't have refrigeration and so forth, and let's say you kill that big mastodon a few thousand years ago. Yes, you could dry much of it, but there was also a feast that was held right afterwards. It wasn't necessarily just to be able to celebrate that you killed this mastodon or later bison or big whatever, but much of it was to eat a lot because you didn't know when the next meal might come. It's better to have it stored on your belly than it is to get spoiled. And that's part of our nature. So therefore, fudge brownie sitting in front of you and you're dieting, you're like, no. You've got to have something bigger than that brownie in order to not eat it if you want to lose the weight. Now that could be envisioning something good, thinking about how you're going to feel later when you're able to fit into those clothes you've been wanting to buy, or how be able to wear that thong bikini when it's summertime, or any number of other things. If that takes over, then you'll have higher self-control. This is one reason why I think religious people tend to be overweight. Now, I shouldn't say tend to be. They just have a higher incidence of being overweight, at least conservative Christian people. And that is because, a lot of socials, they have food, so you connect feeling good with your friends, just like with the cigarettes and so forth, for those that started smoking when they were 13 or 14. But also there's a sense that vanity is wrong. So then you take out one of those big reasons why people try to lose weight. Heck, I've been in California before on the beaches and you see people smoking when they're out there jogging. Yeah, I've seen that. Or you see someone who's out there on the beach and they're pure muscle, man or woman, just really in what you would think would be really fantastic shape. And they're smoking. Now, the thing is, the vanity is such that they want their bodies to look good. And therefore, that overrides that idea that, okay, I shouldn't, that really good food that you can get at any store, I'm going to say no to. Or I'm going to exercise a lot, which also produces feel-good hormones. And I'm going to make sure that I compensate by taking care of that stimulus. I'll eat the fudge brownie, but I'll work out more that day. Now, of course, they're not motivated necessarily by health. They're, even though having a healthy body that way at least is better for them than being obese, but they're smoking because really it didn't have anything to do originally with, wanting to be super, super healthy and fit. It had to do with looking good in a pair of trunks or a bikini, which a lot of religious people don't want to think about. So therefore, you tend to have more weight problems with people that are highly religious. Now, how does this have to do with social media? Well, simple. What humans are used to is a lot of downtime with periodic stimulations that give them thrills. Now, let me say that again. Humans are used to, in a natural state, a lot of downtime. And what I mean by downtime is sitting and just looking at a fire at night, or relaxing, laying, maybe if you're talking about an agrarian society, you plowed your field, you've milked your cows, whatever, especially in the off seasons when maybe, you've harvested them, you just had to find some time to just kind of relax. To me, that would be horrible. I love having stuff to do, but you had time to just kind of contemplate things, to look at the snow coming down. You remember that as a kid? If you grew up before social media, that sometimes you could just go outside, lay down or sit down and watch snowflakes coming down. Or go out at night and stare at the stars and watch for the meteorites and count how many you could, and how quick they came and so forth. Remember that? I'll venture to say most children today do not have those memories because they don't have downtime. They have stimulation constantly because social media gives them the dopamine hits. All right? And also, there's a very important point to be made about desensitization oh man, it slipped right out of my head, desensitization, and satiation. Yes, satiation. Desensitization means you're no longer thrilled by what used to thrill you. Okay? What used to give your brain a hit doesn't give it to you anymore. And that can be positive or negative, something that can offend you. It's like, I can't believe that. But then you see it more and more and more, and pretty soon you're kind of like, yeah, whatever. Satiation can be something that's a reward. Like, you're eating some potato chips, and the first few chips you take, oh, those are wonderful. But then it starts getting a little bit like, you start searching for that magical last chip that you're going to stop at. The one that has all the flavor. For some reason, it was just sitting there when the flavor was being squirted out by the machines. And you might eat half the bag before you get to that particular chip. And then gulp, oh, I found it. And then you wrap up the bag. Or you start looking at it going, wow, now there's only like a half a handful left. I might finish it off. Okay, everyone's experienced that. It could be candy too. I'm not a big fan of candy. I like, chips and stuff like that. But it's the principle can hold for ice cream. Okay, I'll stop eating this really good ice cream once I hit that, that big cluster of cookie or caramel or whatever nuts that have been put into the ice cream. Because you want that last final buzz, and then you stop. Okay? Often what happens after you get the buzz, you're like, let's do that one more time. Let's dig through it more and more and more. Let's get another bowl of ice cream. I gotta get to that. I gotta get another buzz. And so you're rewarding your brain. Your brain loves that because you're getting the calories, because the brain still doesn't remember that, okay, we live in a society where food can be refrigerated, it can be wrapped up and stored away, whatever. It's still there. Okay. But you still want that last hit. And you want that, you want your brain to do that somersault. Like, wow, that was great. Now, social media works on the same principle. It is something that's not normally a stimulus. So it's artificial. Okay? So the conditioning is still something that we've learned as humans. I mean, you scroll down some social media for a dog, and the dog's going to sit there like, yeah, whatever. Put a little treat next to the computer, and the dog's happy then. But humans, we're looking for things that get us going. Now, have you noticed, I said the thing about, children don't have this downtime that are actually our brains. There is research that says you need it. You need to relax. You need to be able to say, okay, let's take a break. All right. And I've heard anywhere between you need like an hour or two a day of doing nothing. Okay. No TV, social media. Now what you can substitute that with is maybe going for a walk or a run or a bike ride. Because your brain's not, you ever notice that when you're listening to music on your radio, MP3, whatever, on your headphones, and you suddenly realize that you haven't heard any of the songs? Okay, you've gone running 2 or 3 miles, and you're like, oh, wow, yeah. Because your brain is kind of disengaged. And that works too, that same relaxation. Plus, with the running, you also are getting those nice dopamines and so forth in your head to where it feels good. Yes, Runner's high, or swimmers get it, bike riders, it doesn't matter. You get addicted to that to a certain degree too. And it's one of the good addictions. Your body likes it because you're doing what nature intended you to do. If you think about how many societies still are nomadic. They walk around. They might walk 20 miles in a day. That's the way our bodies were designed. And most of those people are skinny. If you suddenly put them in an environment such as ours today, often they develop diabetes. They get overweight because it's a sudden change in what they and their immediate ancestors were used to. Now, the social media, though, ever observe how kids look at social media? And by kids, I mean, there's adults that do this too, but especially young children. They're laying there looking for that last great corn chip or bite of ice cream in their social media. They scroll and scroll and scroll, and they fly through the pictures like you're going, whoa, how can you even see what you're looking at? And they're looking for something that just jumps out at them because they've been on it so long that what used to be thrilling, something they would stop and read or look at or listen to, is no longer the same thrill. So they're looking for something bigger. And the social media giants understand this. I remember reading stuff in the past where they said, well, we're going to go to more video format. And why? Because video format is much more exciting than reading. All right? Text now. People like with Twitter, oh my gosh, it's a soundbite. And they're like, oh, yeah, and they're looking for that soundbite. It's not really dealing with analysis unless there's you can click onto an article. But I've noticed that when, I've put something on, Twitter, it very rarely, if it's an article, it doesn't usually, if I have a counter, like on my blog or something, usually don't get that many extra hits because people are looking for the picture or the very short clip. Oh, that 1 minute clip from, that sort of thing. I remember reading back in the 1980s, I think it was, or maybe the early 90s, that a lot of action movies, when they would play in places like, I think it was like Bangladesh or something like that, they would actually, for some audiences, they would take all the filler out and just have the action scenes. It's that whole concept like people talk about fast forwarding to the good part of any kind of movie. And, because they just want to see the action. And if we look at our TV shows nowadays, you compare maybe a James Bond from 1960s to one today. I mean, it's way more action oriented. In the old days, it was actually a detective type show, and very slow compared to now. Now, if you were back in the 1960s, you would think, oh, this is really fast paced. This is exciting. But nowadays, you just get rid of a lot of the, this in all movies, you just get rid of the slow parts. Sometimes I've heard people complain about like shows that you can't say that they're like slow necessarily, but like The Walking Dead, and they'll say, oh my gosh, those 2 episodes were nothing but, dialogue and interaction between people. They want to see zombies eating people, okay? They want to see people getting shot. They want to see all these other things. So they'll say, all right, episode 5 of this season was fantastic because they did this and this and this. But the other parts are like, it was pretty slow. We are being conditioned as a society to want something fast, immediate. Who knows? Maybe we will go into a matrix someday where it's like, I don't have the patience to study or, to learn about this or that or whatever. Just plug it into my brain. Now, of course, the person plugging it in is kind of thinking, well, maybe I'll add a little bit more to it. Or maybe the information that you get, since information is not in any way, shape, or form unbiased, it always has a context to it, then you'd be able to really rewire someone's brain and their attitudes and beliefs. But anyway, the social media thing, though, is particularly dangerous, I think, because it's there all the time. It's clean. You're not necessarily, going to get your lungs clogged up. Your arteries are going to clog up maybe because you're not moving very much. But that's kind of interesting too, because if you're not moving, you're laying there and, you're a student and, a young student, okay, high school, middle school, grade school nowadays, and you're flipping through that phone and looking for something interesting on one of the various social media outlets. You're not getting the stimulation from going out and exercising and moving. So the stimulation becomes even more profound. It's more of a reward when you get it mentally. So it is an addictive thing. I just said I didn't want to really deal a lot with addiction, but in this case I'll make an exception. It will addict you to where you need it. You want your status update. You want to be there. You want to have that phone next to your head at night because maybe someone's going to get in touch with you. Maybe there'll be an update by your favorite YouTube star. Maybe any of these kinds of things will come out. And you want to find out what it is. And that gives you a reward. And then it goes on and on and on. Friends updating it. Hey, did you see what so-and-so posted on YouTube? Or do you see what so-and-so, that picture here or there or whatever? When your friends share it and update you on it. What's going to happen is you don't ever have any downtime. None. Whatsoever. In fact, they have found, I was listening to some radio show, I haven't looked up the study, but they said that people are starting, their brains react the same way to their iPhone as they do to their lover. Same parts of the brain. Woo! I have no doubt that someday people will fall in love with sex robots. No doubt in my mind whatsoever that they will fall in love with their sex robots. Because if they're already having these kinds of feelings in their brain from, a rectangular, opaque, glass metal instrument, then what if it does look like a human being? And it's not really a human being. It's synthetic, but it talks like one. It has the same gestures. Pretty soon you're going to be out there. Oh, I wonder what kind of coat my robot wants this year. You'll be dressing that robot like someone, it's just like these old women that dress their poor dogs up in cute little outfits. Okay, the dog doesn't really need it, doesn't really want it, but it makes them feel good by buying a cute little outfit. And people will be doing that for their robots. But anyway, you get a situation where people can continuously push that pleasure center. I don't know if everyone's ever heard about these studies where they'll put food in one spot and they'll have a rat with a wire stuck into their pleasure center and a lever. So they push the lever, they get pleasure. Over here is the food. And they will prefer the pushing the pleasure center to the food. Now, it's perfect situations if you put them nice and close to each other, and then they'll eat really quick and then go back to the pleasure. But they're not doing anything else. I'd venture to say if you brought a cat in, they'd be kind of like, push the pleasure thing. Okay, well, and not, maybe run away. I've never seen that study done. It would be an interesting study to do. But humans are no different in that respect. So your children, or even you, I'm centering this on kids because I think they're most vulnerable to it. But there's lots of adults that do the same exact thing. If you sit on any kind of public transportation, train, for instance, airplane, when it's waiting to take off, you're in the waiting room of an airport, it's adults too, of all ages, flipping through there, what's interesting, oh, no, that's a video that's 2 minutes long. I don't have time for that. Oh, here's one that's only 15 seconds long. I have time for that. And they need the stimulation constantly. And as things wear down, as they get the satiation and the desensitization, they need more. They need something bigger, a bigger boo, in your face. This is interesting. And so they're looking. Okay? And this is a danger because someone can go to bed and, okay, I'll look at what's on my social media feed here. And they're thinking, it's only going to be 5 minutes. And 2 hours later, they're still on. And they're looking. Do they find something or they just pass out from exhaustion? It's so Pavlovian. Okay? At least Pavlov, okay, he was not the nicest person if you actually read up on how the experiments were carried out and how he actually measured if the animal was salivating or not. It was not exactly, Mr. Cute and Cuddly with his dogs. Or even with his human subjects if you look into it in more detail. But if you think about it, at least he didn't just feed, ring, and just feed the poor dog to death. Okay? Now, there's other thing that I've heard is if you take social media away from someone, they show a lot of the same characteristics as if you take drugs away from someone and they actually have a withdrawal. They're like, oh my gosh, they get nervous. They get stressed. I've heard of situations where students in schools, the teachers demanded the kid gives their phone to the teacher while they're, because class is going on. And that student will act violent, resisting. No, you can't take my phone. No. People have a really hard time with it. People have a really hard time with it. And this means then that it is the same thing as the conditioning that is associated ultimately with addiction. And people, might want to take a look and see exactly how healthy that is. Because if you put a book in front of a student and then you put their phone, what do you think is going to get the most attention? Sure, they may be reading the book, but they are wanting to get into that phone and see what's going on. Because that's way more interesting than, okay, what did I just read in that paragraph? I don't quite understand it. But look, someone just posted a new picture of someone with a wardrobe malfunction. Okay, what is going to catch attention? This is not a very safe aspect to our culture, be it when it comes to health, be it when it comes to being able to compete on a world scale, except for maybe we have the idea that there are plenty, the world's getting wired now, so at least American kids will be competing against people that are just as addicted in other countries. But we're getting into a situation where it's going to be very similar to the United States when it comes to fitness, where you actually, because of all the food additives, you've got to have a conscious decision to be in shape. It's got to be conscious. You've got to be like, I will only eat this much, or I will exercise this much. I mean, you can be addicted to food and be addicted to exercise at the same time. You're going to look great, and you're going to be healthy. All right. Unfortunately, when it comes to the foods in America, if you eat, and especially if you really like that food, and you like that, ice cream that is mostly filler instead of actual ice cream. What I mean by filler is candy bar type stuff and nuts and all kinds of other goodies. You're going to pack on the weight. Americans are getting fatter, but the ones that are in shape are in even better shape. All right. So you've got this almost socioeconomic too, where if you go into nice neighborhoods, people are in shape. You go into working class neighborhoods or poor neighborhoods, and they're in totally horrible shape. Some of that has to do with concepts of social networking and what is the norms in our area. It's been said that if we associate with obese people, we tend to become heavier because it becomes a norm. And, as opposed to if all your friends are like really slender and in shape, then you start associating, you're like, oh my gosh, during the holidays, I put a little bit of weight on. I better get rid of it. Now, the thing is that the same could be true for social media. The people that learn how to use social media, but also say, okay, enough's enough. I'm putting my phone away. I'll get back to my messages. I'll get back to this and this and this after I study. Those are the ones who, when young, they're going to achieve their goals. They're going to be able to study and get better grades The others are going to be like, huh, what? There's a test today? Okay. And one of the problems I see too is, a lot of schools now are putting all of their information also on the computer, which means that this can create more stress. And how do you alleviate that? You're thinking, okay, I don't know if there's supposed to be a test. I'm supposed to go into this. I'm supposed to go into this website here, and then I'm supposed to log into this class, and then I'm supposed to do this. Oh no, there is a test today. Okay, so I see there's some problems there. There should be some sort of, in my opinion, there should be a break. There should be schools this way, maybe supplemental information should be on the computer. That's great. Or if the teacher's supplying links, that is fantastic. It's a great use of social media. Or I guess you can't say it's social media, but it is a media that you can get into and actually use for good. The social media, though, is always going to win out. It's more interesting. Okay, so again, how do you break this? Well, one is you maybe train ourselves and try to encourage people around us to have more downtime. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be away from your social media. I have heard that if you stop social media for a couple days, suddenly your hormone levels get in better shape. If you go to a country, I can attest to this. When you go to a country where all these social media sites are banned, okay, there's plenty of countries out there that ban them. The first couple of days, you're like, oh my gosh, I hope I didn't get a message here. I wonder what's going on there. And then after a couple of days, you're kind of like you don't care. It feels good. Okay, I'm not saying that that's really possible or what people want to do now, but I will say this, that you've got to have more downtime. Stick to social media, turn off social media updates. If you're going to go out in the woods, you probably should have your phone in case, you fall or, something eats you. They can at least use the GPS tracker to find you or something like that. But you got to, realize what it's there for. It's got some great uses. You can share information. You can keep up on people. You can families can keep up on what they're doing. Friends can keep up on what they're doing. That's great. But it's getting to a point where it is becoming the dominant force. That's the reality, and that's where it's got to be pulled away. And again, you've got to realize the reason for it is because your brain's getting rewarded, just like when you train a dog. All right? When you train a dog, you reward the dog for doing something you want it to do. You punish the dog for doing something you don't want it to do. Now, most of it is reward. You don't want just a whimpery dog that, doesn't want to be around you. But at the same time, it's reward. Oh, it's doing this. You're getting it not to do what it normally wants to do, whether it's to jump up on someone, whether it is to run off, whether it is whatever. You're getting it to do tricks. You're getting it to do something it is not really designed to do. But the rewards get it to do the things that you don't want it to do. So ultimately, yes, social media and Pavlov's dogs is more related than you may really want to acknowledge. But when you acknowledge it, then you get power over it. And believe me, you better get some power over it, because ultimately these social media giants are not there to make you feel great about yourself. They're not there to get you to achieve and to grow as a human being. All right? They're not there for that. They're there for profit. And profit will come through, the same concepts as television. Your TV shows are not there to do you a favor. Okay? I've been to countries where, the TV programs are designed to try to elevate the people. That's usually when you have like a country that's communist. You don't have all the glitz, but of course maybe you're not exactly into, all these history programs and science programs and stuff like that. But television goes for what will bring in audience and therefore what will sell, what advertisers can use to sell. Nothing more. And when you realize that social media is the same way, then you can be in control of it instead of being like the dog, like, sitting there and, mouth open and tongue out and like looking for that little treat, looking for that little thrill, that zoom, that will satisfy your poor brain for a few minutes.